Welcome, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar, Exploring the 2023 Safety Performance Report, presented by an esteemed panel of industry experts. Today's presentation is being recorded and will last approximately 60 minutes. This presentation will be available on ABC's website within 24 business hours. Attendees will also receive an email with the link to the webinar recording. Please note, all participant lines are muted. You are welcome to submit questions throughout the webinar by using the question box located in the bottom of the sidebar. We will get to as many questions as possible during the Q&A portion of the presentation. You may also minimize and expand the GoToWebinar sidebar by clicking on the red arrow in the top left corner. I would now like to kick off today's webinar and hand it over to Joe Xavier.
Great, thank you so much, Joseph. Appreciate that introduction. And welcome everyone to Safe and Sound Week 2023. This is our feature Safe and Sound event, and we are going to talk about our safety performance report. Let's go ahead and introduce our panel. Frank, why don't you go ahead and tell us about yourself?
Sure, thanks, Joe, and thanks everybody for joining us here today. My name is Frank Trujillo. I'm the Vice President of Safety for Miller & Long Concrete Construction out of Bethesda, Maryland. I also have the pleasure of serving as the chair of the ABC National Safety Committee this year. We're working really hard to make STEP and the Safety Performance Report as useful to members as possible with the great team we have. So thanks again for having me, Joe, and look forward to participating in this conversation.
Great, thanks so much, Frank. And we're going to turn it over to Eric for a quick introduction as well.
Hi, thanks for having me, Joe. Thanks everybody for joining today. My name is Eric Riccardi. I'm with Safety HQ, a foundation software company. So been with the company and in the industry for about 10 years or so now. Happy to hopefully provide some insight on the technological components of safety today and add some color to our really fantastic staff and contributors here on today's webinar.
Great, thank you so much, Eric. And Greg Sizemore will not be joining us. He's actually at an ACOSH meeting right now with OSHA, but we do have Frank and Eric, and we have a full presentation for you that will be very informative. I'm Joe Xavier, and I'm the Senior Director of Health and Safety here at ABC National, and I'm very happy to have everyone here on board today. So let's go ahead and jump in and get started. So this webinar is going to be all about our safety performance report. And this is about taking information and going from awareness over to action. In this report, we publish it every year, and we debuted it at our ABC convention in March electronically, and then the printed copy was distributed during one of our June legislative week conference. And what we're going to do today is go through and have a deep dive to explore the leading indicators and the lagging indicators, and determine which leading indicators had the biggest impact on the 2022 lagging indicators for the construction industry. So before we get into that, we would like to talk about STEP, right? So hopefully all of our ABC members, you know what we mean when we say STEP. This is our STEP Safety Management System. It was started back in 1989 by several members within our ABC National Health and Safety Committee with the idea of developing a benchmark, developing best practices, and being able to kind of compare notes with everyone in the industry with the idea of making people safer within the construction industry. Since then, 1989, it's grown. We now call it the STEP Safety Management System. And the magic of this system are the 25 key components. You can see them here on your screen. All of these components, when you combine them together, will help you to measure, strengthen, and build your safety program and give you industry-leading safety performance. And those are some of the things we're going to talk about today. Now I'm going to turn it over to Frank to talk a little bit about what STEP means to him and to Miller & Long.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. The STEP process to me has been very helpful in that I've been able to use STEP, as I said here, if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. So what it helped me get out of the everything feels good or this looks good mindset and actually get into the execution part of it. And a good friend of mine who I work with on some of the technology side of things asked me, he said, how do you know if you're doing the right things, and how do you know if you're doing the right things right? And I think STEP is a great way to set that tone in your efforts as you're trying to improve your safety program overall. And I had kind of a two-prong approach to talking about STEP, because I want to talk about how I originally used STEP. When I started using the STEP process, I would go through each of the 25 key components and I'd print them out on paper. And I would work my way through the STEP key component, and I would start from right to left, as Joe will describe here in a bit, and grade myself on the things I was doing in that particular category. And I would circle where I was, and I would look at I would circle the items that kept me from advancing to the next level. And those were my action items. And I would have that printed copy on my desk for reference, and I would go back and look at it from time to time and see if I had started to check off those circled items. And ideally, over time, you would improve your performance on each key component and level up, from bronze, silver, gold, platinum, diamond, and just keep working your way up. And I didn't even focus on the TRI or DART rate, because I think if you're working on the key components, those things should happen automatically if you're implementing each one of those key components as they're described in the STEP evaluation. So I think that I want to describe that. That's how I started. Now, what I'm excited about is where STEP is going. The use of, if you haven't checked it out lately, you should go online to abc.org and look at the STEP dashboard for each organization that your organization probably has. It's becoming much more live and interactive. The idea of having a stack of papers on your desk with pen marks on them and you go back and look at are hopefully going to be something we move away from and get into a more live interactive version of STEP on this dashboard, where you can actually go in and access resources and it'll monitor where you are at that time, and you can do all these things online versus having the paper on your desk. So, it's been an evolution of understanding. It's been an evolution of growing STEP as I've stepped into the National Safety Committee and leading it this year with a great group of folks. And I think it's only going to get better. I think everybody should get involved as soon as possible and start leveling yourself and setting your course ahead.
Great. Well, thank you, Frank. And I could see Eric cringing a little bit when we were talking about paper. I know that every time we talk about this, I think of sitting in my office when I used to work for a heavy equipment dealer, and just pressing X's and putting X's on spreadsheets and thinking, oh my gosh, like there has to be a better way to do this. Yeah, so I'm glad that Eric's on here to help us with the technology side and show where technology can make it even more effective, where we can spend less time in the office, paper and spreadsheets, and more time in the field with people. We'll go to the methodology here. And as you can see on your screen there is one of our 25 key components. This one happens to be the letter C for culture. It's our third key component for the culture segment, and it's about safety program and goal setting. And what Frank was describing as the self-assessment is that you kind of go through here and you see which column best describes what you're doing currently. And the idea is that you go from 0 points to 3 points to 6 points, and then the 9-point column is the best practices one. So every now and then, and including this year, our committees have been working to retune and fine tune and upgrade the best practices columns, and we'll debut that in 2024. But currently, this is the one for 2023, and you can see that it goes from 0 to 9. Some of our key components go from 0 to 6, and then some of the ones that are most heavily weighted go from 0 to 12 points. Now, in the graph below there, you'll see that there are two graphs. One is the low and one is the high. The one that is low is the combination of the 0, 3, and 6-point columns, and then the high one is the one that is just the best practice. So every year when people go through their STEP and they submit their data to ABC National, we have our data ninjas, and they slice and dice everything up. and then they come out with these numbers. And what we do with this is we actually correlate the best practices to the outcome, to the lagging indicator, right? So we take all of our leading indicators and then correlate them to the lagging indicator. And so how you read this chart here on the bottom or the graph is that you know, the yellowish one is the total recordable incident rate. These are the OSHA definition. And then the white column is the DART rate. So the ones that are a little bit more serious, that require days away or restricted or transfer from a traditional job duty. And then you can see that the members that had the lower ratings compared to the members that had the best practices. So you can see that for that one, there was a 56% reduction. I usually talk about these as ROI charts. That's not really return on investment, but it just shows you, gives you an idea of, you know, by implementing one of the key components, how much of a effect it should have on your overall safety program, or that it did in fact have for the members that did the best practices. So what are they? So which of the key components had the biggest effect? These are our foundational ones. These are the ones that were most widely used and had good return on investment, so to speak. And we're going to go through each of these four and describe them. So I'll introduce each one. Frank will kind of give some flavor to it, some color as to how you implement it. And then we'll also ask Eric for any comments he may have on how to use technology to make that more effective. So new hire safety orientation, this is all about that first impression. This is all about what do you do on that first day when you have a brand new hire, to orientate them, to introduce them to your company culture, to introduce them to the expectations that you have for safety at your company. So you can see that this one, from the low score to the high score, there was roughly a 48 to 52% reduction in your incident rates, which is pretty significant. So I'm going to turn it over to Frank and just share with us some of the things that you do for new hire safety orientation.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. And I also want to comment on the chart to the left here, because, you know, in safety, we're always trying to make the business case for everything we do, because, you know, there's the feel good and then there's, you know, the business case, and there's two same sides of the coin where you're trying to make the business efficient and profitable while protecting your folks. And I think these charts in the safety performance report are incredibly valuable, because that is your business case. To the extent your TRIR and your DART rates are lower, that's money. You know, that's money in the bank, insurance rates. That's also your people. I mean, it's so hard to find good people these days, and to have any of them on light duty or out of work is just a tragedy. Aside from the moral implications of it, just from the workforce side of things, it's a lose-lose when somebody gets hurt, and or lose-lose-lose. But this is a great way to make the business case out of the gate. Now, that being said, new hire orientation. When I first came into the industry, as maybe some of the old timers on this call might remember, it wasn't uncommon to go on a general contractor's job site and see them have a TV there with a built-in VCR and the tape right there next to it. And if you were lucky, when you sat down, it was already rewound. But they would pop it in, and then somebody you didn't know would be talking about things that aren't happening on that job site. And you would sit there, and thank goodness we didn't have phones back then, because we would have all been scrolling some social media at the time. But we would sit there and stare at the screen and each other and our feet, and not think about anything that was being said on that screen. And now it's very encouraging from the highest level contractors, even down to the smallest guys that are just starting up. Everybody seems to understand that you never want to miss the opportunity to set the tone or set the expectations for your people. And that's where the safety orientation is crucial. It's not an obligation, it's an opportunity. And I think that you want to get those people in and on your team, on the same page, working in the same direction, integrating efficiency, planning, performance into your safety discussion as you're having that new hire orientation, so that everybody is working in the same direction. Because if everybody understands, knows how to plan, knows which tools are for what hazards are associated with which tasks, not only are you going to have less injuries, you're going to have better planning, better productivity, better care of your equipment, you won't have misuse of tools. The benefits are endless, and I think most people know this, but I think the safety performance report really helps make the case in simple terms.
That's right. And just hearing about the old ways we used to do it, that was actually paper and pencil. And then now we upgraded to spreadsheets. But Eric, can you share a little bit with us, like how you can use technology, like the LMS systems, or some different things that we can use to automate some of those administrative processes?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Frank brings up a great point, right? There's a cost element to this that you ultimately are going to save. Let's, the moral element aside, the safety of the new hire and those working around the new hire is obviously paramount. But there's a key component to that we didn't really address is retention, right? If right out of the gate they see that whether it be technologically, but in this case more importantly safety, you are at the cutting edge, you really care about this, and we'll discuss this more when it comes to like top management culture and things along those lines. But a new hire comes in, sees that, in this case, you're putting an emphasis on safety, and you're using the best tools out there, whether it's the tools out in the field or tools in this case from a safety perspective, to make sure that that team has everything that they need to be safe out in the field and that you do care about them. That has an enormous impact on retention too. So as Frank alluded to, I think we all know, and it's been overstated. It can't be overstated, but it's stated almost endlessly how hard it is to find good folks out there. That first impression you make from a new hire safety orientation, using technology, emphasizing safety, really goes a long way from a retention standpoint as well for those employees.
Great, thank you so much, Eric. And our next foundational one is substance abuse prevention programs. And this you can see is a very significant reduction. The ones that were low score to the high score, you can see that there was a 62% reduction for the serious ones, 59% for the total recordable incident rate. And it has a big impact on your company, right? Doing things to make sure that your members or your employees are not in a position to abuse substances. So, Frank, could you share a little bit with us about what you do?
Sure. This is a touchy subject, in the country right now, because there are so many trends in the direction of legalizing substances and normalizing the use of some substances that might affect your judgment. That aside, I'm 100% in agreement that they have no place in the workforce. They have no place on the job site. So the fact that a third of all incidents on construction sites are drug and alcohol related is enough information right there. The question is, how do you monitor for that, and what kind of programs do you have in place to make sure that you're recognizing folks that might be showing up to work in less than optimal shape. It's interesting this week to talk about this subject because we've been out on job sites all week, and it's gonna run into next week because we just got too many to hit in 1 week for Safe and Sound Week in mental health. But we've had employees bring up substance abuse assistance as part of the discussion for mental health, and I think they kind of go hand in hand. And I think if you're looking for symptoms or indicators of somebody having a mental health crisis, you have to train your folks or have your folks looking out for each other on people that might be abusing even legal substances like alcohol. If somebody is coming to work late or intoxicated or smelling like alcohol or talking about drinking throughout the day or maybe even going out for a drink at lunch, everybody's got to be on the team to recognize those situations, whether they be present on a job site at that moment with somebody intoxicated by some substance or somebody who appears to be showing up in less than optimal condition. Everybody's got to be on the same page. Everybody's got to be looking out for each other. And we have definitely had situations on our job sites where workers have called the safety department or human resources department anonymously, of course, and said, "Hey, you guys got to come out here. We've got somebody stumbling around the job site. They're going to get hurt. They're going to hurt somebody else." And I think the second part that I just said, they're going to hurt somebody else, is something that everybody has to be very aware of. And in my experience, they are aware of it. You just have to give them an outlet to get that information back to you so you can help the people that need the help. Because a lot of these folks that are having these issues with substance abuse, are having other issues that are causing it.
Right, and just to add on to that, I mean, even more so now with heat, right? So now we have heat stress, and when you get into some of the more mild side or mild to moderate side of heat stress, you know, some of the way the person's behaving, it could look like they're impaired, right? So you want to be even more aware of it. And I like the fact that our members are looking at this not necessarily as a got you, right? It's not about testing someone to catch someone. It's about having that whole program and also like kind of, you know, identifying where people are who might be at risk before they hit rock bottom, right? So it's not necessarily a gotcha, we're trying to fire you. It's more so just to keep everyone on the up and up. Great. Okay, let's go. And there's and one of the things for STEP that we have is we have this drug and alcohol-free workplace pledge. And we encourage everyone to go to that website to take the pledge as part of the data submission process for the STEP safety management system, because we understand how important it is, and there's resources that are there. Okay. So our next foundational one is the toolbox talk. And the interesting thing here is the frequency. You know, everyone kind of knows what a toolbox talk is. You know, someone is standing there sharing information with a crew. It's a specific topic. It could be, you know, specific to that job site. It could be specific to the season. Maybe there was an incident that happened on another job site. You would share kind of the report of it here. But the interesting thing that we're seeing is that the frequency, it used to be monthly, and then the best practice was weekly. And then now what we're seeing, even though there are still people that do it monthly, what we're seeing more now is that people are doing it weekly, kind of as a standard practice, and then more people are trending toward daily. So it's kind of a neat trend that we're seeing, you know, just from the data. So Frank, how do you guys do this?
Well, we have weekly toolbox safety meetings, and we have daily pre-task plans, and I think most of our peers are doing it that way. And again, this is almost similar to the safety orientation discussion, where you want to set the expectations, communicate your expectations, set the tone for the workday, or if you're doing it daily, or for the week if you're doing it weekly. Talk about the processes and procedures that are going to be engaged in on the job site, so everybody's clear. And the really effective ones are: we're going to be doing this today. We're going to these folks are going to do this. These folks are going to do that. Do you have the tools you need to get that job done? And the feedback is you know, important, because it helps with the planning. A lot of accidents come from people using the wrong tools, you know, because they're using the wrong tools, so they have to use them incorrectly, and then they wind up, you know, getting hurt. Something as simple as, hey boss, I'm out of those bits that we're going to need for that activity, can save you a mountain of time. If you've got a 20-story building and they get up at the top, look in the toolbox, realize they don't have any bits, now they got to come all the way down, look in the toolbox at the bottom, then you realize they're not there, then somebody's got to call the yard, and it's got to come from the yard. You know, think of all the lost productivity just from the lack of planning. That's part of the safety planning process. So I think just the planning from a weekly, and I'm a big fan of the daily, obviously, from a planning and efficiency perspective is a no-brainer. That being said, I think it also is, going back to my last point, it's a great opportunity for the superintendent, the foreman, the crew leader to assess the workforce visually and through conversation. That's how you're going to realize if somebody's not 100%, or somebody's going through a mental health crisis, or somebody's showing up to the job site in less than optimal shape for some reason. That conversation. A lot of companies have their own stretch and flex program tied to the weekly or the daily meeting. And I've even, you know, contractors will tell you, I noticed so-and-so was limping when we were trying to go through the pre-task in the morning. That's a huge catch as well, for obvious reasons. So the toolbox talks, the more often the better, because I think it ties into so many other things associated with just keeping people informed and knowing if everybody's ready to go.
That's right. Great. So Frank's company, you guys have crews of people, and so there's a crew leader or a superintendent or supervisor, and then a bunch of people in the crew. But Eric, how do we do this for maybe smaller contractors or specialty contractors where there isn't a foreman, you know, crew leader and a crew? Do you have, what would you recommend for something like that?
Yeah, no, thanks, Joe. I think this is where technology can really be of assistance, right? I think Frank's given some really good examples on especially experienced crews and what have you, but if you're on the smaller side, maybe you have crews that, or, inexperienced foremen, supers, what have you, or maybe somebody who doesn't quite have that title but is leading these daily talks. Without that experience, it could be a little bit difficult. You can be a little disjointed. And I think having a technological aspect to, number one, have live updates to make sure that this is getting done, right? That's a key component. And I think Frank's quote at the beginning of the presentation is fantastic. If you can't measure it, you can't manage it. So making sure that these are getting done, especially if you're a small crew spread out over a couple of sites, that's paramount, right? Making sure that this is getting done. This is a foundational element to your safety. But aside from that, the biggest piece is you may think you're doing well, but not until you get some dashboards, until you get live feedback and data to show that these are actually being completed, they're being done, and getting that those results. You can't follow up, you can't manage those things as a whole. And then again, if you're a smaller crew, maybe it's a near miss, maybe it's one of those items, being able to distribute information in real time, maybe something that's really relevant. The smaller you are, those near misses, they should be impactful at any scale of business, but especially those smaller ones when absolutely every one of your coworkers, you can distribute information those on a more frequent and meaningful basis as well too. So having a technological solution to not only make sure that you're addressing those situations, but to feed that information out from location to location and centralize it is really key to making sure that this is getting done regularly.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Eric. And that's a fantastic segue to our next foundational key component, which is about top management engagement and really having all of that data in that dashboard readily available that, at any instant, someone from top management or anyone in the company can look at the dashboard and see how you're doing in terms of safety, how you're doing against your goals, how you're doing with, percent training completed, the observations, all those things. So that's great. And Frank, we're going to jump over to you and ask you what are some examples or some of the things that you do to make sure that top management is fully engaged in the process?
Well, fortunately at Miller & Long, I don't have to do a lot of nudging in this process. I mean, our folks are really engaged, and our president of the company, John, is on the job, or he's on the job sites every day. And I would not, I'm busy. He's busy, and the fact that he finds a way through all the meetings and all the bids and everything that he's got going on to get on the job sites and talk to people. And the most interesting thing to me when he gets out on the jobs is he's not out there pointing and yelling. He's just talking to people. He's just out there talking to them, making sure that he's reinforcing the behaviors that he wants to see again, not reinforcing the behaviors that he doesn't want to see again. Benevolent leader, so to speak, just out there with the folks in the dirt, making sure everybody understands what he expects of them. And I think there's no more powerful message than when your leader gets out there and does it themselves. Now, I'm lucky in that regard. Not all organizations might have that going on right now. I don't think it's from lack of upper management wanting to be out there. I just think sometimes you get caught up in all the things that are going on to try to run a business, and you just don't find time to get out on the job sites. It's just difficult with all the other obligations you have, including family. But what's awesome is you can quantify it. You can take this chart that's right here on the right side and say, hey, boss, just so you know, not that you need a reminder, but look how important it is that you're out there. I mean, this is not Miller & Long data. This is not ABC company data. This is all contractor data. It shows out right there. In case you needed a nudge, here it is. And we'd love to see you out there, spreading the love and making sure everybody understands what's going on and what you expect.
That's right. And it's a significant improvement, right? So getting top management involved. I love how your top executives are engaged and on the job sites. Probably talking to people about safety and their training and making sure they have all the resources. That's fantastic. Okay, so now we're going to transition into these 5 core leading indicators are the ones that were the most impactful for this past year. And the first one we're going to talk about is behavior-based safety. So behavior-based safety in its truest form is where you have a whole process set up. I've seen when this first came out, it was a bunch of cards, like everyone would have a card, and then one person would stand back and watch another person perform the work, and they document things on the card, and they turn everything in, and very, very administratively heavy on that side of it. But Frank, what do you do in terms of behavior-based safety? How does that work at Miller & Long?
Sure. Well, I think this is a good opportunity for me to just, be honest and say that when I was doing my step evaluations throughout all my time here at Miller & Long, I would always score very low in this key component. I did because it was something I had left behind for all of the other concerns that we had, because this is very hard to manage without technology, to be completely honest with you. There's so much data coming in if you're doing it right from all levels of the organization, that to bring it all together and have it all make sense and not just be an activity is extremely difficult. And I have seen a lot of technologies out there that can help with that. For Miller & Long, what we are doing and working towards, as you said, the more traditional side of behavior-based safety, is we've started really basic, and we started with the safe observation cards. And I have one right here with me that I keep in my pocket. Actually, I have a little stack of them, and I hand them out to folks all over the job site. But what we're trying to do is get safe observations. It's a scanned QR code, takes you to a sheet, in this case, a smart sheet that will collect the data. And we also have on the other side best practices. So anybody who is out in the field and wants to scan and make an observation, typically foreman or superintendent, so an employee can do it for another employee as well. But when somebody's recognized, you put down the name of the employee, the job site, what they were doing, and the reason you think they should be recognized. And as you can see on the left-hand photo there, this is actually our safety guy on one of our site safety managers on the left, presenting a safety award to the worker on the right who was observed doing something well. And I think, this is a great, way to start and work your way towards the left side of that BBS key component. And I can tell you, in the bag, there's a small gift card, and I believe it was like a tumbler that had Miller & Long on it. And, that's huge. And people just love getting things with the company name on it typically. And this has been a great program for us. So this is our BBS system that we use. And I know Eric is probably chomping at the bit to talk about how technology can help with this, because I fully agree that technology is a big part of making this work.
Yeah, no, thanks, Frank. It is a key component, because as you mentioned, there's so much information to be able to consolidate this and actually make decisions, make improvements. I think what's important to focus on is the end goal, right? It's actively coaching and informing the group, right? I've seen a lot of behavior-based safety programs, from our clients and so forth, that really kind of focus on the negative and kind of dissuade people from participating because of all of the slap on the wrist type of items. I think if you can collect the information effectively, you have that information as you go, then you have a wonderful tool so that you can focus on the positive and really spin that to an informative coaching experience where people are working together. And then, of course, like Frank, it sounds like you guys do a fantastic job of that, to continue to engage them, right? If you reinforce that behavior positively, the rewards for not only them, but for the company as a whole will be, profound. So, excellent perspective.
Mm-hmm. Great. And for behavior-based safety, we see it used most frequently in our industrial sectors, right? So not so much as in commercial construction, we see a lot in industrial sectors. And I can't imagine doing behavior-based safety with the cards and a pencil. You would definitely need technology to be able to do so. It's just so much information. Great. And employee participation, the name of that one is exactly what it sounds like. We can't do anything without our workforce. And in order for anything to work, we need to engage our workforce. So what are some of the things that you do, Frank, that you'd like to share with the group?
Well, one thing I love about the construction industry is that nobody's typically, if you set up the system right, people aren't bashful to tell you when you're messed up. So if you think you know what's going on, take it out there and have a one-on-one conversation with somebody in the field, especially around the safety process or procedure, and they'll tell you whether it makes sense or not, in more colorful language than that typically. So I think you have to get out either on the job sites. I think on the job sites is really good because you get people in their natural environment. They can talk to you, they can show you things in practice. But I think you also got to take the next leap and form, some sort of work groups or committees where you're getting people on the job sites that are on the tools, not just the foreman or the superintendents, people that are on the tools, talking to you about how to make things smarter and better. And the added bonus here, and I keep bringing you back up, is you'd be surprised at how many things they'll tell you that won't just boost your safety, it'll boost your efficiency. They'll tell you things you might be paying $100 for a bit that they think is trash, and they think the $30 bit is awesome. You need to hear that. You need to hear stuff like that. You might be buying a certain brand of saw that you were saving $5 on, and you find out from talking to the folks in the field that maybe it's dangerous, maybe it breaks easy, or maybe the one that they like is actually even cheaper, or maybe it's more expensive but it lasts twice as long. Maybe it's $5 more but it lasts twice as long. These are the things that you need to hear, that you go out there looking for a safety perspective, and you'll get it. You'll get the safety perspective on how to make it more efficient. But man, you'll hear some great things about your work processes and what makes sense and what doesn't. If somebody has to carry something twice, and they should only have to carry it once, and the reason they have to carry it twice is because you save $2, they're going to tell you. They're going to tell you, and you need to listen, because they're going to help you be more. They're going to help you be more efficient, and it all goes hand in hand with safety.
That's right, and it's kind of like an upward spiral, right? So the more you listen and they see you change, the more they're willing to say something about the next item, right? Then you improve on that, and that just really has a turbo effect for your employee participation. So great, thank you. Let's see, we are still on track here, so let's keep going. Our next one is, pushed it too fast. So one of the things about our key components is that some of them are like they build on each other. Like we saw employee participation and behavior-based safety, when you kind of add them together, there's a synergistic effect. You get more people involved, and as they get involved, they things kind of change and they get better. So one of the other thing is that supervisor safety meetings, the intent of this one is to have essentially a meeting. A weekly meeting is the best practice, where your supervisors come together and meet with you about safety. And there's kind of like a peer group, because sometimes you'll have one supervisor that isn't currently dealing with a situation, but another one is, and that person shares. And then the other supervisor learns, hey, when that comes up on my job site, I'm going to ask him, how I'm going to go to that person for some more information. And also talking about this leading indicator, I've heard a lot of safety pros talk about the first time that a superintendent came to them or called them about something that's going to be happening 2 weeks from now to get their input, right? So it builds that relationship, it builds that trust. And one of the things we want to make sure with our supervisors is they are trained and understand how to seek and get that engagement from that frontline employee. So all of that is just this is a very powerful key component. And I think I shared everything on that, Frank, but do you have anything to add to that?
I would just give you the example for us is that we have our meetings around every 6 to 8 weeks with our superintendents, and then we bring in our foreman also. And there's nothing, we all heard the horror stories about people, your leaders underneath you leading in opposite directions. Military folks will tell you that that's there is a diffusion of responsibility to some extent, but you also want everybody leading in the same direction. So you have to make those opportunities to make sure everybody is leading in the same direction, because I talk about it all the time with some classes I teach. One of the biggest enemies you'll have is people trying to interpret what you mean. Okay, you can say something, like you can be very clear, or you think you're being very clear to the people that are going to go out and execute the mission, but they start interpreting what you really mean. Like Frank said, he wanted us to be really safe, but I know what he really means is he wants me to be safe as long as I can get it done on time. I didn't say that. I didn't say I want you to be safe as long as you can get it done on time. I said I want you to be safe. So you have to be very clear and make sure that you're not having folks kind of branch off with interpretations of what you meant. And the only way to do that is to make sure you're saying the same thing and you're doing it often.
Great, very good. Okay, we're going to move to I know we covered this one a little bit. I always call this one alphabet soup. It's the task-specific safety process. Some people will call it a job hazard analysis. That's a JHA. Or if you're doing a lot for Army Corps of Engineers, EM385, you'll just call it an AHA. Some people call it an STA. There's so many different names for this. I call it alphabet soup. But essentially, it's a job hazard analysis that you do on a daily basis. And Frank, I think you shared a little bit on this, but was there anything else you want to share about this this process?
I just want to add to the alphabet soup and say we call ours the SWAP, the Safe Work Action Plan, just because we had to have our own to be special. But it's the same thing. You know, it's a 3-column, you know, activity, hazard, mitigation. It's the same one that's used on all JHAs and AHAs across the board. AHA has the risk code also. But I just the one thing I'll say about this is the whole point of a task-specific safety plan is making safety local, making it specific to the task being performed. You can't cover that in a weekly toolbox talk with 50 or 100 people at the meeting. That's not specific enough. And the point of these meetings is to make sure that it is specific to the task. And you have to be, otherwise folks aren't going to be prepared. They're going to start making things work.
Very good, very good. Eric, I think you shared about this one a little bit when we were talking about toolbox talk. Do you have anything else to add specific to this one?
Yeah, I think Frank brings up a good point about making it local, right? I think making these relevant, finding a way for each of these to not be a burden, going through these thoroughly, but also making sure that you have the time to effectively cover them with the team. This is where we see a huge increase from all of our clients as far as if you're not doing any of these previously. Typically, we see some folks, okay, well, we're scaling up now, we're required to provide some of these. If you guys aren't doing some of these items right now, it's worth reviewing on your own before you're necessarily required to do them for a certain job. This is where a lot of our clients have noticed a huge increase in safe behaviors and things like that, because it's so much more relevant and so much more local. Whether they do it on their own, sometimes they don't necessarily have the choice. It's because they're doing a different type of work and all of a sudden they're being asked for these. But you know, taking that initiative yourself, making the team familiar with them is really key.
That's right, and not everyone is a safety professional, so I know it's always nice to have, you know, some of the checklists and things on the app to be able to jog your memory or kind of make you think twice about something. So it's always great to have that extra support there with an app. Great. And I think this is our last key. Oh, I went too fast. Our last key component to talk about that's featured in our safety performance report, and that's safety inspections. And you know, this, you want to have a very robust program to look at all the different things that could potentially cause a hazard or a situation. Frank, do you want to share some best practices?
Sure. I train. We just talked about this on, well, what's today? Yeah, yesterday at our superintendent meeting we had last night, and I brought up what I like to call the big four when it comes to effective safety program management, especially how OSHA sees it. If you ever have a conversation with them about this, number one, you got to have a program or process in place, established, okay, for everything you do. Number two, you need to train on the program to make sure everybody understands what the process and the program requires. Number three, you have to monitor for program implementation. And that is where the safety inspections come in. That's where your audits come in. So you have the program, you train to the program, then you got to make sure it's getting implemented properly. And you assess that implementation, the efficacy of your implementation by your safety inspections and your safety audits. And the fourth component, which is somewhat tied to inspections, is your enforcement policy. So how do you reinforce the implementation of that policy? So you have the plan, you train to the plan, you inspect, you monitor implementation of the plan, and you enforce the implementation of the plan. And those are what I like to call the big four. And I think the safety inspection part of it is that last part of making sure that your intentions are realized, because you go through all this effort to make sure that you create a well thought out program or procedure that doesn't put undue burden and still protects the folks out in the field. And you got to make sure it's working. And the only way it's going to work is if you train to it and you coach it and you monitor it, you enforce it, and that feedback loop just continues to make sure you get the most efficient, effective process possible. So I know Eric's got a lot of things to say about this on the inspection side, because it's one thing to go out there, walk around, point, and take pictures. And maybe I remember when I was first starting in the field, I would go out there, take pictures, text, or I'd go back to my office, print them out, write down next to them what the picture was about. When I was really zealous as an early safety professional, I would write down the OSHA standard that went with it. And then I would create a report, send it to the superintendent, the project manager, and my boss. And I was awesome. You know, I did all that work. And now that is like crazy archaic, and there's systems that Eric probably wants to talk about that can make that so much easier.
Yeah, no, Frank, I no, that's awesome. It's awesome to hear that experience. But I think that's a key component of where technology can really help, right? By the time I'm just thinking of through those steps, and more power to you, amen, right? But like the time it takes to do all of those and complete all of those tasks, are you getting up-to-date information to the field? If you see a circumstance that needs to be addressed and you want to provide a corrective action, how do you assign that? How do you follow that up? And you know, there's a lot of ways we can automate that with technology, but making that simple and handling the logistics, all of those headaches that you don't want to do, you know, there's no way around it. You need a safety professional out in the field actually reviewing this, using their eyes. Technology, you know, at least for now, I don't want to say never because it's grown so rapidly, right? At least for now, you need those eyes and ears out in the field to review those and follow up, like Frank said. But it's all of those things in between. It's marking the corrective action, getting it to who needs to, you know, review that, and then having all that data in one place to follow up and make sense of this so that you can be proactive in your safety program as a whole and prevent injuries, prevent issues before they occur. That's where technology really, really can make a huge benefit or can make a huge difference and is extremely beneficial. So I'm biased in that regard, but having real-time, up-to-date information and saving all of those headaches, maybe saving you a little ink from your printer, there's definitely some options out there for you to simplify that process for sure.
Absolutely. I definitely have to second and third that. I remember those days too of producing this wonderful, amazing report and then send it to the superintendent and they're like, this job's done already, right? But technology, you push the button, the platform assigns it to everyone that needs to correct it, and then they correct it, then they push their button, and then everything's documented as being corrected. It's a game changer. So for people that aren't using some kind of technology platform, you know, you can really be saving yourself a lot of time by automating the administrative side of it. So here at ABC, so we just talked about 9 of our 25 key components. But we have, you know, 25 plus this year where we added in total human health. So just wanted to let you know there are resources out there to help you. So first we have the STEP safety management system, which we talked about at the top of the webinar, and what an amazing tool that is. Then we have this safety performance report that correlates those leading indicators to the outcome. And kind of give you an idea of, well, maybe which ones should I prioritize for my organization. But on top of that, we have a safety academy that when your executives come to the safety academy, either Mike Bellaman or Greg Sizemore or myself, and we're getting ready to train a whole bunch of people, including Frank, to be facilitators of this safety academy. We'll go through all 25 key components and really give those top executives the ability to lead and manage safety just like they lead and manage everything else in the organization. And lastly, we have a network of, we have 68 chapters across the country, and many of them have safety peer groups where every month we cover 2 of these key components, and it's almost like this webinar, but it's in person. And it's, you know, you get to hear from the best of the best in your area about how they're using the key components to make their company better. So
Joe,
with that, I'm going to turn back to Joseph.
Oh, sorry, if I may real quick. I'm from the, you know, we have a ton of our clients that are involved in ABC, but I just want to emphasize to this group here how you've taken the first step being an ABC member. You've taken the second step being on this, you know, on this presentation. But really accessing and utilizing these resources and these tools at your disposal are huge, and especially that fourth component. The best quote that I heard from one of our clients is safety should not be a competitive advantage. You have so many other peers and resources in this space. take advantage of them. I see it from folks that are in trade organizations, not in trade organizations. That's why we're so happy to be a part of ABC and work with ABC, because of all of these values and resources that you guys provide. So take advantage of them, please.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Eric, for that. I'm going to turn it back over to Joseph, and then kind of close it out and then open up to questions.
Wonderful. Thank you, Joe. We do have a few questions if you'd like me to transition to that period.
Oh, sure.
One of them is from Richard Grant. He says, we, a general contractor, find that smaller specialty contractors, sub-tiers, do not have access to the resources to even comprehend some of these. They struggle with basic safety training, leadership, etc. What tools can ABC offer to help smaller organizations start on the road to STEP without having to perform the full evaluation?
Well, that's a great question. I'll take the first on that. Thank you so much, Richard, for the question. So we do have different peer groups where you can learn more about STEP. We also have some resources on our website to learn about the data submission process. And for people that are just kind of sticking their toe in this and are kind of getting familiar, we do have like a first step process. And Frank, any additional thoughts or comments on that?
Well, the first step process is like a baby step, I guess we could call it. Is how you start to get into STEP and get going. And I think the other thing is local chapter, as Joe said, peer groups that people can join. And I think, you feel the plight for the smaller contractors, because we talk about technology and the solutions that are like Eric offers and other contractors offer. I think there's a misconception that a lot of these programs cost more than they do. There are some levels of this technology that can get you started. Safety audit software by itself is not overly costly, as I've experienced, for a small organization. But I think the peer groups can help bring to light some of those solutions that are out there that can at least get people on the road to leveling up their safety performance.
And one of the things I like to talk about in terms of STEP as a safety management system is that the magic of it is that it's sophisticated enough for large contractors to benefit from it. And yet it's simple enough, if you just follow the journey of it, that even a small company that doesn't even have a safety person, where maybe the safety person is the HR person who's also the logistics person and is maybe out there in the field as well. But to me, the magic is when you take those 25 key components and then you have your executives kind of go through and rate themselves on a self-assessment. And then before I joined ABC, when I was a consultant, I like to take the 25 key components and do it with the executives, but also go down to the front line and then kind of get their do their self-assessment. And sometimes what you find was there was a gap between how the executives rated the company and how the front line rated. And to me, the magic is closing that gap. And I've seen people, they'll do the 25 key components, the self-assessment, and they'll try to do all 25, where they're trying to improve on all 25 key components in the same year. What I recommend is that especially if you're small or big, is go through the self-assessment, identify maybe the 5 or 6 that would have the most impact for your organization wherever you're starting your journey, and then take that recommendation to your executive team or to your owner and ask them, which one that they want to commit to knocking out this year. They may only choose 1 or 2, but if they're fully engaged and they fully commit to those 1 or 2, that's great. Knock those out, and then the following year, just do the self-assessment again, reestablish where you are, and then keep incrementally improving, 1 or 2 at a time per year. And what you'll find is that there is a synergistic effect between the key components, and that as you're getting better, on 1 or 2, it makes you better on the other ones as well. So I think we answered your question, Richard.
Can I add one more thing there too? I think just want to reiterate kind of one of one of the things, so I think Richard's onto something. And I think that, when a smaller contractor looks at the 26 key components, it can be a little overwhelming. I think just filling it out and, as you said, choosing the ones that most impact you most. But I don't think a lot of contractors, hell, even the large ones, really look at the SPR. And I think maybe we could all do a better job of making sure that large and small contractors really understand what the SPR is, Safety Performance Report, and what it means, because we just went through an hour-long presentation about how really there's 9 cores that have huge upside. If you were buying a stock, this would be a high beta stock. This would be something that would have a very high return on investment for every dollar spent. And as we talked about, a lot of these things are kind of basic concepts, but it all comes down to how you do them. Do you do them well? And I think when you're talking to a smaller contractor who's resource constrained, you can say, hey man, hey team, look at these 9. These 9 have huge upside. All you got to do is really just do these well, and then expand from there.
Very good. Great. So Joseph, do we have any other questions? I think we still have a couple minutes left.
Yes, we have one from David. He is based in Montana, and ABC does not have a chapter in Montana. He is wondering if STEP is available through Safety HQ, or do we need to be a member of ABC?
So STEP, everything we just talked about, it's on our website, right? So the STEP, the 25 key components, they're all on the Free Cyber website. You don't even have to be a member of ABC to have access to it. It's completely free. This Safety Performance Report, the electronic copy is completely free. It's also on the Free Cyber website. The idea behind this is that we want the entire community of construction safety to benefit. So all of these resources are on the free side of the website. Now we do have our STEP award system where people get awarded the bronze all the way up to the diamond. For that part, you do have to be an ABC member, but the tools themselves you can use for free even if you're not a member.
Okay.
Great.
And then I have one more question from Richard Grant again. He would like to know, what can we do to move this towards, so in reference to BBS, he's saying should not really be a category. It is an outdated theory that is not effectual. What can we do to move this towards relationship-based safety or human performance / safety 2?
Well, actually, I'll take this one, Joe, if you don't mind.
Frank?
And disclosure, I think I know Richard. If it's the same Richard I think we're talking about, I think it's my buddy. What I would say, Richard, is I want to pull you into the conversation because we're actually looking at all these key components right now and trying to figure out which ones need updating and which ones maybe can be combined or reworded or just overall just made more effective. So if it's Richard Grant, I think it is. I think it is. I'll reach out to you, buddy, and get you involved in some of this process, especially around the BBS key component.
Right, and now I'm kind of regretting that we took out the total human health slide. But to Richard's point, that there's a broad spectrum of where people are in terms of their safety management systems and philosophies, and I call it the next era of construction safety. It's total human health. It's the whole person approach to safety, not just the body, not just observing what people are doing in terms of their behaviors, but also exploring into the mind, heart, and soul and getting into some of the deeper issues of the whole person, right? And being on a construction site. So that is something that we introduced to STEP in 2023, and it is part of the STEP data submission process. And next year for 2024, that component will be counted within the score. So behavior-based safety, I think the best times I've seen it applied especially for our smaller contractors is when they incorporate it into their drive cam systems, where you have a camera and the GPS system, the telemetrics, and it's giving constant feedback to the driver about their driving performance or safety performance or behavior while they're driving for your company. So that's how I've seen some people use behavior-based safety. Total human health, it does incorporate more of the whole person approach, the human performance, the human operational performance, and some of those newer safety systems that you had mentioned, Richard. So with that, we'll turn it back over to Joseph.
Thank you. We are out of time for today. On behalf of ABC, I would again like to thank our panelists. This webinar will be archived on ABC's website, abc.org. Attendees will also receive an email within 24 hours with a link to the webinar recording. Today's webinar is copyright 2023 by Associated Builders and Contractors with all rights reserved. Thank you, and you may now disconnect.
Thanks, everybody.
Great.